our series on all things financial wellness. And today we have a really important topic in a year that is unprecedented as we're dealing with the coronavirus and the economic disruptions that follow that. And that is, how are we going to handle our taxes? But before we jump in, let me let you know this episode of Your Money, Your Life is brought to you by Prudential, a 50-year partner of Earl G. Graves Sr. and his mission of creating sustainable generational wealth in the Black community. Find out why more than 25 million people turn to Prudential for guidance on building a legacy. Learn more at prudential.com/legacy. Now, I want to welcome to the show the perfect expert to have this conversation about taxes in the year 2020. Kimberly Washington, CPA, speaker, author. Kimberly, thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
So let's do the big picture. What are you seeing, or what are the big issues that I think both entrepreneurs or business owners, as well as just families and individual households, what's new and what's not new about getting ready for this new tax season?
So right now, of course, the biggest thing is the pandemic outbreak. Everybody's concerned about COVID and what steps they can take. And I think understanding the CARES Act, which was passed in March, is one of the biggest things that people could kind of keep their eyes on. As it relates to retirement distribution, some people have to dip into their retirement accounts. They have to make sure that they understand the different rules. For instance, if you take less than $100,000 from your account, you're not charged any type of penalty if you're under 59 and a half. And also you're not required to withhold taxes. So if that does become a resort, something you have to do, that is something that you may want to think about. And then also as it relates to retirement, it can be taxed over 3 years. So if you pull money out this year, you can actually reduce the taxes by taxing it over the next 3 years. But I think the biggest concerns for not only just entrepreneurs and also for individuals is how they're going to make it from this year to next with all the different uncertainties, which they've always been there. But right now people are thinking, okay, how do I go about the next phase? So I think that's the biggest things that people are looking at. How do they make certain that they have the cash flow to make it from this year to next year with all of the different changes that definitely occurred this year?
I've been talking to financial experts for this show all year around the normal rules of managing finances, and then the rules that have been created by the current environment.
Right.
And this is the first time in a long time that I've heard financial experts like yourself say, normally you don't touch your 401k.
Right.
But in this case, you might need to because it may be necessary. Talk about the shift in mindset that you as a financial professional have had to have with your clients and the people you coach and you advise around the normal rules of managing your finances and what may be necessary in this unprecedented time.
Right. And what may be necessary is looking at your budget and your expenses, not only on the personal side, but also on the business side too, as well, and really thinking outside the box. We've seen some business owners really pivoted, saying, okay, well, I normally will provide this type of services, but as I move into the next year, maybe I need to change this way. And also having a conversation as it relates to brick and mortar, having offices. How does that change? I just wrote an article as it relates to home offices, and more people are working from their homes now. So how does that change as it relates to real estate environment? So all of those different conversations need to come in play, and you really need to look at your expenses as you move forward, of being probably more careful and saying, okay, do I really need this? Is this really creating more money to my bottom line? And so I think just having an active eye and looking at your expenses and looking at ways that you can create additional revenue as you move into this next year, because we are in some different times.
Well, one of the reasons I wanted to have you on this show, because again, it focuses on financial wellness. So not just the technical side of money and finance, but the emotional, spiritual, mental side, is that you really do address kind of the holistic issues around, in your case, faith. Yes. And obviously people's faith has been, really be tested. Their faith, whatever they believe in. This is a period of testing for everyone.
Yes.
Talk to me about how, again, with the people you're working with, trying to keep their eye on the prize, and helping them to understand there is after this, there is hope for tomorrow. Yes. Talk about what that means in terms of your advice, just keeping them on the straight and narrow from a tax planning standpoint, and just keeping them spiritually centered.
That's really a good question, because as you may know, I write Christian books as it relates to faith and also financial topics too as well. And so even having conversations with my clients and having conversations with colleagues that are connected to me, where I'm often encouraging them as it relates to reading the word, making certain that you're praying, staying hopeful and being positive, and just try to think of a concept or something that can keep you going. I'll say, just for instance, just recently talking to someone and I asked this person, okay, what's your baseline? Meaning that what are you waking up in the morning doing and what are you going about your day? And when I say your baseline, something that you can always come back to. And so particular for this person, I was just encouraging this person. She's has her own business. She's going through a lot, but just waking up, meditating, praying first before you start your day so you can really know exactly how you're going to go about this day. And during COVID, she's been doing more of that and she's been able to get more results. So it's not just about going out and say, okay, let's look at the budget, let's do some tax planning, but really waking up a little bit earlier, whatever faith that you have. For me, I'm a Christian. So for me, it's praying or just starting my day in that manner. But that has helped me a long way with everything going around me, staying on Psalm 91. And I think that's really, really key, especially if you are a small business owner or anyone in this environment who's gone through different challenging times.
It's funny you say that. I interviewed Optimum Capital Management President Ryan Mack, who is a financial educator and also, a man of faith. And he talked about going through a period of depression after losing a major deal that he had working, and how he came out of it was, and he got this advice from his mother. She said, just focus on getting one thing done every day, like just one thing to get you moving. And that's how he worked his way past that particular crisis. And so it was an act of faith, but sometimes the act of faith literally is just saying, I'm going to do this one thing today, and that's going to get me to the next day and the next day.
I like that too. And my mom always say, keep it moving, and that's K-I-M, like Kim. She always say, Kim, keep it moving. And so that's what I try to remember. Just keep it moving, like you say, just taking it day by day.
So let's get some of the brass tacks. What is different about tax season this time around? I mean, I'm thinking about things from, how do you handle if you got a stimulus check, if you are an entrepreneur and you got PPP money, and and whether you had to pay it back or not.
Yes.
How, if at all, how do those things play into tax planning this year in a way that it would not have in previous years?
So I think that when you think about tax planning going into 2021, there's a lot of different key things that you need to think about. Number one, we have a new president. And so with this new president, I say could, because we just really have to wait and see what's going to be some of the changes in the Senate. Is it going to be more Democrats than Republicans? So all of that's going to make a big difference whether Biden's tax policies can be implemented. But if his policies are implemented, if you are a person who's wealthy and you earn more than $400,000, this may be the year before the end of the year that you may want to make some small moves. For instance, he's indicating that once he becomes president and he implements these tax policies, he's going to raise taxes on those individuals. So they're going to see an increased amount of taxes being raised. So as it relates to itemized deductions, this might be the year where you want to spend more money as it relates to different types of itemized deductions to reduce the tax burden. So it's just small moves like that. As it relates to a corporation, again, if Biden does implement those tax policies, he's indicating that corporations will increase, the tax rate would increase to 28%. So if you're a corporation and you're at the end of the year right now, it may make more sense to purchase like buildings or property or whatever the case may be in the next year to reduce the tax liability. So those are moves that wealthy individuals can make, corporations can make. As it relates to individuals right now going into the tax year, again, under Biden's policies, he's indicating he'll increase different credits like the child tax credit and also the child and dependent care credit. So that's some things that's really going to help those individuals. But I think as you move forward to the next year, it's a good idea to make sure that you have a tax professional. You also mentioned the stimulus payments. We know that that's not going to be taxable for those individuals this year. But one thing to keep in mind, if you are a person and if you are entitled to the stimulus payment and you haven't received it just yet, next year when you file your tax return, that would be the time where you can actually claim the stimulus payment and be able to get it at that point. So that's just some small things. But the biggest thing I think as we go into the new year is we have to keep our eyes on and see what's going to happen as it relates to Congress and also the president-elect.
Yeah, this is a season where everybody really needs to pay attention because there's so many moving parts. I want you to speak even some more, and you and I are on the same page on this. I tell people just because you can do your own taxes doesn't mean you should do your own taxes.
Right.
The tax code can be so complicated. It's going to be even more complicated in this year of transition, both political policy as well as just because of the pandemic. Talk to me about why it really is worth, taking the time, spending the money, and yeah, it should cost money because it's a service to
Yes.
get a real, and you're a CPA. I mean, a real bona fide tax professional to help you work through this. And I tell people all the time, I used to be one of those people. I'm a financial journalist. I'm smart. I can do it. And the first year I got somebody else to do my taxes, I saved $5,000. Like the money that I paid for them didn't compare to what they got me back in terms of things that I just didn't know. And I told people, it's not that you're not smart enough. You don't have time to understand this stuff the way you do.
Right. And you bring up a lot of good points there. And so I say there's different reasons why you want to make certain that you hire a tax professional. Number one, what if you're audited and you have to walk through that process? If you have someone already on your side, maybe someone who have already helped you with your tax return, or with the IRS just contact you concerning a small matter. If that person knows the tax law, and I'll give you an example. I had a client who came to me, I never prepared their taxes before. But when they came to me, they were a partnership tax return, and many people don't know this, but if you file your partnership tax return late, you actually charge about $200 each month per partner. Well, this case, this individual actually had I think they had 15 partners. So when they filed their tax return, they thought it was due April 15th, but partnership tax returns are due March 15th. And so they did come to me and I was able to help them, but I was able to get the penalty completely removed through something called first time penalty abatement. And so that's something that you may not know that's even available to you. So I say at least have that relationship with someone in case something comes up, and you can just pick up the phone, talk to that tax professional, talk to that CPA, and that's a good thing. You bring up another point when you say that you work with a tax professional, you was able to save $5,000. One of the things I do with my clients, especially if they're small business, I may look at their tax returns from prior years and make the suggestion to change the entity, whether it's from an S corporation or partnership or whatever the case may be. But that small move alone can help you save thousands of dollars. And a lot of people don't realize that, especially small business owners who are paying a lot as it relates to self-employment taxes.
Taxes is one of those perfect areas that no matter how smart you are as a professional, as a journalist, a doctor, a lawyer, you don't know what you don't know. And your job is to know both what used to be, what's changed, what's new. Tell me a little bit. Now I want to get a little bit about your own journey, because I respect you. I'm fascinated about you as a professional because I know your story. But talk to me about what it means to you to pursue this particular path as a profession. Like, this is not just some profession you randomly chose. This is something you're very passionate about. Talk about why you are.
So I'm very passionate with accounting, finances, and personal finance. I started off my career working for the Internal Revenue Service. I had this dream job. I wanted to become a criminal investigator with the IRS because in college I was told that you can carry a gun, right? And have your accounting degree. So I'm like, yeah, sign me up. And I did. And I went away. I went to the IRS first and I worked as a revenue agent, but still had my mind on that dream job. And true story, I actually wrote this letter to God and said, God, please give me this dream job. And he did. I became a criminal investigator and I went away, and I realized that was something I forgot to ask God was, what would you have me to do? And he's like, okay, now I'll tell you. And so from that moment on, I really started, I had the opportunity to teach at a university. I worked as an accountant on movie sets rather. I also worked for Black Enterprise writing for you guys. Just so many different places and so many opportunities open up. And I had the opportunity to start writing books. So for me, it's more of a passion, and it's not about money or anything like that. I just realized when I was working with the IRS, one of the things that really, I knew that God was pushing me in a different direction because I would meet people who didn't have the education and knowledge. I came too late, if that makes sense. When it was time for them to be audited, or if it was time to have assets seized, or it was time that a criminal investigation would start. I wanted to be on the other side where I can help you before you get to that. So I have clients who come to me and I explain to them, hey, if you make this move, this may hurt you on the end. Some people say, okay. And of course, some people's like, really, Kim, do we have to, take it that way? But I just want to make sure that they're educated and understand so that they don't have to go on the other side. So I think for me, that's what it's about, just education and just giving the same knowledge that I've been able to obtain through all of these years. I've been working, especially in the tax area, even in college, and working as an accountant for my dad at the age of 16. So this has been something that's just been deeply rooted in me for such a very long time.
Well, you've been doing such amazing work, and I'm always amazed because you look like you just got out of college or something. But our audience needs to understand you've been doing this for a long time and you're really passionate about it, in addition to being expert on it. So hold that thought. I'm going to drop this message in. This episode of Your Money, Your Life is brought to you by Prudential, a 50-year partner of Earl G. Graves Sr. and his mission of creating sustainable generational wealth in the Black community. During that time, Prudential and Black Enterprise have collaborated to promote the personal and societal benefits of career, entrepreneurship, and money management. Today, as both new and continuing challenges present themselves, Prudential remains committed to helping people build lasting legacies. Visit prudential.com/legacy to learn more. So Kimberly, there's some things that I'm curious about now in terms of just the life changes, the changes in our households, the way we do business that has really been transformed in this past year. And one of the areas of curiosity I have is the whole home office deduction thing. Now, I've been working from home, at least most of the time. I've had a dedicated home office for more than a decade, even when I was going into the city every day. But now you got maybe hundreds of thousands of people who, for the first time, whether they're doing it for their jobs or doing it for businesses, actually are working at home. But many of them they're working from home, they have an office, but they're letting their kids study in there. And I know there's some things about the office being a dedicated office just for that.
Yes.
Talk to me about what people need to be thinking about both now and in 2021 going forward when they talk about what it really means to have a home office and a home office deduction.
That's also a good question too. I like, it's kind of like you read my mind on that one, even before you asked the question. But after the 2017 Tax Cuts and Job Act was passed. So during this time, many employees realized who had a home office, we're talking about employees right now, they realized going into the 2018 tax year when they prepared their taxes, they were no longer able to take deductions as it relates to employee business expenses. One of those employee business expenses were the home office deduction for employees. So right now, fast forward to 2020, and where we have all of these individuals working at home, they're going to be surprised again when they go to do their taxes next year, thinking that the home office deductions apply to employees. It no longer does, but it does apply to those individuals who are claiming self-employed income, those individuals who are independent contractors, those individuals who are making money on their own. They can take the the home office deduction. And the way that it works, you said one thing as far as you might have a home office that maybe also doubles as your child's bedroom. Well, the IRS does state that you have to have a home office and it has to be dedicated just to that home office. So you do want to keep that in mind. There's two ways you can take it as a deduction. One is called a regular deduction, and the other way is simplified method. With a regular deduction, you just total up all of your expenses like mortgage interest and also utilities and all of those different expenses. And then you just multiply it times the percentage, the square footage of that home office within your home. The simplified method is easier. You have a 200 square foot home office. You just multiply it times $5, $1,000. That's going to be your deduction. But it only applies to individuals who are self-employed. That's going to be those individuals. So if you're just an employee, you don't have Schedule C income coming in, other type of self-employment, you will not be able to take it going into the next year.
What are some of the maybe challenges or opportunities, or let me put it this way, other possibly deductible expenses, if any, as a result of everything from, are they giving parents breaks for having to educate their kids at home because they can't send them to school? Are there expenses associated with that? Or should there be? Or should there be something that we might expect in the future?
Hopefully with Congress next year that some of these different issues could be addressed, like the home office deduction, homeschooling. But as it relates to homeschooling, there are some credits on the state level that you're normally able to take, but it depends on the state that you live in. So you need to check with your state. Here in Louisiana, I know we have what's called a student expense deduction that you can take. And that's for individuals who homeschool or also send their children to different type of schools. As it relates to other type of credits, if you are a parent that's working from home right now, and you also maybe have a person, a nanny or someone that's coming into your home who's taking care of your children while you're working, that may qualify for child and dependent care credit. So you may want to look at that. So that's one way of being strategic concerning that. But as it relates to employee business expenses, it is pretty limited when you work for someone. That's why it's a good idea to talk to your employer and say, okay, well, as it relates to supplies that might be in the office, can I have some of those supplies to bring it to my house to reduce some of the costs, and just really having that conversation just to make certain that you have some of the financial burden is taken away from you during this
That's
time.
actually very, very reasonable. And again, I don't know, this is one of those situations, a lot of times people don't think to ask.
Yeah.
I think most employers would see that as reasonable, that you're doing work, you're just working in a different space, but you shouldn't have to buy your own office supplies or
Right.
ink for your printer. But I think a lot of people, again, one, because they're kind of overwhelmed by the situation,
Yes.
and other times they just don't think to ask. And
Yeah.
one of the biggest, most important messages of this particular show is to give people things to ask.
Yes.
Because if you ask, you may get it, but if you don't ask, you're definitely not going to get it.
That's right.
Are there things that you think that we need to be thinking about in general? And I'm now talking looking forward. At some point, we are going to move past. Like, every crisis ends. It seems like when we're in it, it's going to last forever, but it does end. What are some of the long-term mindset that you want people to maintain, so they don't just react in the moment, but they still think about what's really good for them in the long term, both in terms of tax planning and financial planning in general, that's going to be the same whether it's a crisis or it's not a crisis?
I think that's also a good question. And so, just like you said, this too shall pass. But as this passes and we're feeling okay again, something's down the line 20 years from now, whatever the case may be. So, how do you change your mindset and how do you get into a better rhythm? I think, if anything, this year has taught us all so much. And one of the things, with that being said, I think that as an individual or a small business owner, this is a time to really get organized as it relates to your financial documents, putting things in place. That's something that I talk a lot about, like on my blog, if I'm on the news. I call it setting down financial house in order and really getting everything in place. Because I think what happens for many people, things are just all over the place. So as we go into the end of the year, maybe take a few days, really sitting down. I always say, put everything in one space and just put an envelope and have this conversation with family members and say, if something happens, this is what you can expect. But I think the biggest thing as we move forward from this step to the next is, number one, getting organized, kind of slowing down your life too as well. I know for myself, before COVID, I think I was just moving too fast, And so with this, it just really gave me a time where I can wake up a little bit earlier now, make certain I'm meditating, drink more water, really small things, that normally I said I was going to do, but then I got busy again. So I think now, and don't head out once you move on past this, is like picking up all of this stuff again. Just being intentional, being purposeful as you move forward from this space, I think is really, really key. But more importantly, I say get organized so that as things come about us again, we can take just a step back and say everything is going to be okay.
You must be the sixth or seventh financial professional in different areas, whether it's investing, financial planning, you name it, the gamut. And each one of you has said that what we thought was a disruption, if we look at it not as a disruption, but a pause that allows us to catch our breath, look at our situation, whether it's our family situation, our financial situation, our tax situation, organize and prepare in a way that, because we were always running and gunning the way we have to, to serve our families, to serve our careers, to serve our businesses or our companies we work for. And, initially it was a shock to have to stop.
Yeah, that's right.
But from a financial planning standpoint, it really does give you a chance to say, okay, what am I really doing here? What are my goals? Maybe my goals 5 years ago have changed and I never had a chance to think about it.
Yes.
What are you seeing in terms of the people you're working with, and are they taking advantage of that opportunity?
I think a lot of people are, and some of my clients are actually getting larger opportunities during this time. And so that's a really good thing. I have one client in particular who received a corporate contract. I'm thinking of another client who's also going into an area where they're selling more products now. So I think a lot of clients too, and not only just clients and some friends too, are now just taking the time, and say, okay, that business I always put to the side, I'm going to start that business right now. Some are saying, okay, I am going to start working from home. I'm not going back because now I have more time with my children. So just across the board, I think, and even if I can just say personally for myself, this has been a time where my sister and my mom, we've connected. We pray each morning. We were not doing that before. But I just think that this whole process, this whole COVID-19 has just really changed a lot of people where you can stop and say, okay, what am I doing? How do I restart? And what really matters the most? And I think the key is sometimes we think of subtraction as a bad thing, but subtraction is actually a good thing. You know, removing some of the clutter out of our lives so we can be more purposeful of doing what really matters the most. And I was looking to see, I had this book that I'm reading right now, but I thought it was around here, but I think it's in my other room. But I was just going to show you, but it's a book that everybody knows. It's The Purpose Driven Life. And I'm doing it right now with one of my cousins. Everybody knows that book, and I read it many years ago. But it just reminds me during this time that really subtracting from, you know, moving things out of your life, the clutter and the unnecessary things, gives you time to do what really matters the most during this time.
You know, the way I expressed it early this year, and both on social media and to my mentees, as I say, the reason I get to say yes to everything I really want is to learn to say no to everything that I could have.
Yeah.
You say yes to everything you can have, you can't really have everything you want. But
Yes.
if you say no to what you can have everything you really want. And like you said, this year, this season that we're in, whether we didn't ask for it, but it really gives us an opportunity to think about what really, really matters. Yeah. Now, I spent my time picking your brain because I knew what I wanted to ask you. What other points do you think is important to make before we end our conversation?
I would say we're just thinking as a lay person or just an individual, if you're thinking about what moves you need to make at the end of the year, some of the things you want to look at is the Paycheck tax withholding calculator at the irs.gov website. So you see whether or not you need to make any moves before the end of the year. And so in case you're going to owe more taxes next year, you'll get an idea right now. Another thing, you want to look at flexible spending accounts and make sure you zero those out, because many of them have a use it or lose it feature. So you want to do that before December 31st. And if you're a person who likes to give, this will be the time. So charitable contributions are important before December 31st. But really sitting down, looking at all of your finances, looking at your financial situation, and just really making some decisions, whether they're tough or simple. What steps can I really make moves to just make my finances even simple as it relates as I go into the end of the year? What moves do I need to make? So this is the time to start looking at things.
You know, the other thing that I love about you, but I love about you great financial professionals in general, is you're great stress reducers. And that's how I tell other people why it's important to avail themselves of your services. Taxes in general and financial planning in general, I mean, we have a lot of emotion attached to money and a lot of anxiety around it. And, you know, a professional like you says, listen, I'm gonna lower the temperature. It's gonna be all right.
Yes,
You don't have to face this alone. Talk about how important that is, especially in this season of high anxiety that goes beyond the normal tax season. You know, you have unemployment, you have people who have been ill, people lost a lot of lives, businesses have been disrupted, and anxiety in general has been at an all-time high. It feels like the whole year we've been on edge. Right. Talk about that aspect of a really good financial professional, a good tax professional, helping you to really bring that anxiety level down and giving you a sense of comfort and security.
And I think that's actually key in any professional, because when I think about just services that I need, if I go to someone, I need them to say, okay, it's going to be okay. But one, I could think about a particular example just recently with a client that I just started working with, a guy who's making changes to his tax return. He was concerned about the IRS. And I said, listen, it's going to be okay. I'm like, he's saying, but what if this happens? And what if this happens? I'm saying, listen, it's going to be okay. We're just going to take it step by step. And just assuring some of my clients, I just said this to someone else who reached out to me, you're not the first and you're not the last. Meaning that just, yes, you're going through this situation. Somebody else has gone through this situation. I know others who've gone through this situation. We can walk through this, take it step by step, and everything will be okay. But I think that makes a big difference. And people do want to hear that things will be okay. We can put these solutions in place. We can put these strategies, and it's still going to be okay. It's going to be okay. And I think that's really, really key. That's
the ultimate wealth is being able to sleep at night.
Yes, that's right.
In the midst of uncertainty and turmoil around you, to have some peace and joy within you.
Yes.
And that's not just about wishing and thinking. It's also about, you know, reaching out for people's help so that you can have that practical peace in your life.
Yes, that's so key.
I think if we didn't learn anything else this past year, we learned that having a little peace in the house, in our heads, in our minds, and our spirits, is a very, very valuable thing that I think many of us took for granted.
Yes, it's true. It's true.
Listen, Kimberly, how would the Your Money, Your Life audience get more from you, learn more from you? Where can they find you? what's the best way to connect with you so that they can get more of your wisdom?
They can follow me on social media at KimSense, or they can go to my webpage at Kimberly.com, and it's Kimberly with 3 E's, KEMBERLEY.com.
And it's Kim Sense, KEM Sense like money.
Yep, that's right. Sense like money. That's correct.
Listen, Kimberly, thank you so much for being on the show. I got to have you back. I better bring you back in April.
That's right. That's about the time in April.
Yeah. But when we see what it looks like after the changeover in administrations.
Or maybe before April, so it wouldn't be that people have already filed and then I'm saying do this and then they got to go back and file. So maybe like March.
Okay, bet.
Yeah,
let's do that. Let's both make a note to circle back.
Okay, sounds good.
Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
You've been listening to the latest edition of Your Money, Your Life. This episode of Your Money, Your Life is brought to you by Prudential, a 50-year partner of Earl G. Graves Sr. and his mission of creating sustainable generational wealth in the Black community. Find out why more than 25 million people turn to Prudential for guidance on building a legacy. Learn more at prudential.com/legacy. Thank you for listening to this episode of Your Money, Your Life. I'm your host, Alfred Edmond Jr., Senior VP, Executive Editor-at-Large at Black Enterprise. See you next time.